an absolute honor to be here today and to see all of your interest. On the first of the TEFAF Talks edition on the topic of multi-generational collecting. And it's a delight to have George and Joël Kremer here with me today, father and son. George, you and your wife are private collectors and have been collecting art, Dutch and Flemish Old Masters, for the past 30 years.
Yes.
Excited to hear more about that. You're the founder of the Kremer Collection. And Joël, you are a partner at a digital agency focusing on 3D experiences. I'm very excited to hear more about your tech world and how it connects to the art collection your parents have built.
Thank you.
And your project that you'll introduce to us. So maybe to begin with the first question, George, I briefly introduced you. Can you introduce us to your story and how you began collecting versus where your collection is today?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having us. I appreciate that very much. Having all these people come up is quite special. Our collection started in 1995. Consists of about 100 paintings or 100 works of art, including etching plates, which are included in that number. We started in January of 1995 by visiting a dealer, and I was actually surprised by the fact that old masters were still available. I was very naive, and I went away that afternoon with my first painting, and it was a bit of a shock because I actually had never bought art, and I'm not a very impulsive person, but somehow or other I sort of got that idea got a hold of me. And this was a painting by Govert Flink.
It's on the screen.
Huh? Oh, it's on the screen. Wow. You know, modern technology. I'm still not used to it. Anyway, it's in the literature, it's in the books, so I was very impressed. It's a pupil of Rembrandt, and I thought it was fabulous. But it was still a big step because you paid real money for this. I'd never done that, and I was very proud of myself. So I came home and I had it under in my arms, and I showed it to Ilone. I said, "Well, what do you think of this? This is Rembrandt pupil." And she looked at it and she said, "Ugh, terrible." So that actually put my feet on the ground again, and I had a bit of a sleepless night. But that sort of went away rather quickly. And that first year, we actually started studying. I started studying, and I think Ilone came around because she realized that old masters is actually a fascinating type of painting, a school which is exciting in and of itself, and very much part of the international, let's say, art scene. So yes, that's in short the history of the collection. And my wife, by the way, who's not here, because she had something else that she was going to do, is very much part of this. Well, that's the fun part of it, is that we do this together, and I'm the studying type, and I know the dates and I know the names, and if you ask her, she'll mix them up. But she is very intuitive, and the combination is actually an interesting one because you make very few mistakes, and I always ask her opinion, definitely, and so that's it.
It's beautiful how you've married this into a family endeavor.
Yes.
And Joël, you're in the middle of it as well in the meantime. Can you, looking back at when your parents started collecting, do you remember because you were presumably a teenager and they had this new passion and fire. Do you remember your first reaction to this or your thoughts?
So I actually cannot, so the first paintings were bought in 95. Cannot remember you telling me anything about that. What I do remember is in 1998 at the Pan in Amsterdam, the Jacques de Rousseau that my parents had bought was rediscovered as an actual Rembrandt. Old man with an old man wearing a turban. And what I remember from that is the fanfare at the fair, as well as the poster and my last name being plastered all over Amsterdam, which that's definitely something you don't forget quickly. Yeah, but not. I don't think it really hit me what that meant yet.
Yes. George, you just described your first purchase as impulsive. And you also told me it was the biggest step you've taken in collecting, probably overcoming some kind of barrier or entering a new world, so to speak.
Yes.
How has your process of collecting and selecting artwork evolved from 1995 to today?
Well, so in a way, that first step was the most difficult one, because you do something that you've never done before. That's always, a big hurdle. After taking that hurdle and being told by my wife that she didn't like it, I persevered. And I started studying, I started reading, and I started looking at paintings a lot. And that means following the auctions, visiting museums, having discussions with art dealers, getting to know the art that I was looking at. Initially, there was a bit of mixture also with 19th century French art, but already rather quickly we decided that we should focus on Dutch art, because less is more. You have to, at some point, specialize in order to do something really well. And I think we've succeeded in doing that by focusing. So yeah, it's a lot of studying, talking to people who know really about art and who can teach you, and those people are around, so that's actually very fortunate. We have made many friends in this world. My restorer, Martin Bell, I've worked with for 30 years. These people can teach you a lot about how to look at paintings. And once you do that, you discover that there are so many green colors in actual nature. It's amazing. And you start looking at pink skies in a different way. So it basically, and it evolves from there. So you get to know, let's say, the material. You then decide what you like, because you always have to like what you buy. That's the most important lesson, as it were. Forget about the name, forget about money. I mean, those are not important, obviously, but that's not the essence. The essence is, do I like something? Is something really good? That's really important. And that's what we like to try and achieve.
Yes. Has it been important to you to pass that on to Joel and share some of that selecting or the eye for the artworks that you choose with him?
The answer is yes. To get my son involved in something like this is exciting. Because as I mentioned to you, as a collector, you have choices in life. And when you get towards, let's say, when you get older, collectors essentially, by collecting, they create an ever-increasing problem. So the question is then, what do I do with this collection? And you have, as far as I'm concerned, you have three choices. One is to sell the collection, which completely negates the reason for building it in the first place. So that was not an option. Second option would be to actually give it away. That actually is, for the same reasons, that was not really a survivable option. So only is left then is the chance of having your family, your son in this case, and even your granddaughter, picking up on this. So the long-term plan was to get him interested. Now his focus, and he'll tell you that himself, is different from mine. He doesn't have to become, let's say, a great collector or great knowledge, although he does learn a lot at the moment in paintings. He likes etchings, he likes his digital role, and digital is very important, or will be very important for us as well. It already is. So that's pretty exciting. Nice.
So Joel, you mentioned you're very involved now. Your original passion, though, is in the tech world.
Yes.
How do you use your knowledge and expertise from the tech world to carry your parents' legacy forward?
I guess if you look at one of our missions, or the main mission, I would say, of the collection, is to share it with as many people as we can. So to let people enjoy it, study it, look at it, learn from it. And almost by definition, if you don't use digital, that's very limited. And
Yes.
I'm going to say something that is, it sounds not so limited, but at the Louvre, they can handle about 9 million people a year, and they have a hard stop. And many top museums are following. But there are, of course, hundreds of millions or maybe billions of people who are there, who might also have an interest that you can awaken, and that can learn from that and enjoy that. So for me, by definition, digital is that way forward in our mission. Of course, immediately followed by, if you have a chance to see the real thing, you always should. But digital is certainly very important. So from my background, I have a background of about 8 years at Google. I was always looking, because that sort of coincided, although I didn't start working at Google until 2004. So by then, I was very much into tech and all the new startups and technologies and gadgets. And one of the things I tried to do was to say, okay, well, if my parents have by then collection of about 40 or 50 paintings already, how can I use what I like to do to help what they like to do? And I had no answer, because what we did at Google was sell ads. And if I sold an ad, we paid money for that. And you bring people somewhere, let's say to a website, and there they have a picture. Back then, not a huge picture, just a picture, and some art historical text, which is extremely important, but not very readable for everyone. I say this very respectfully, and that's it. So there's, and in my business, I was always focused on return on investment. So I spend $1 and I have to earn $1.10, or I have to earn for my clients. So that wasn't a thing. But one of the things that I did manage to do very early on was to create a zoom tool with Google Maps technology. So on Google Maps, when you zoom in, what you're actually seeing is a huge file cut up into tiles. And because it's cut up into tiles, based on the coordinates or the city that you put into the system, it loads just the tile, which means it loads much faster. And I wanted to do the same for our art, because I thought, there might be things in this painting or copper etch plates that you wouldn't see with the naked eye, and there are, which is really fascinating.
Yeah, you've shown me.
Yeah, so we did that, and that got me involved in the website project, and here we are, much later.
Yes, the website project.
Yes.
Your virtual museum. Can you explain the process of creating that and the museum itself?
Yeah, so a few years after that first aha moment, as a collection, again, you have many options of what to do with the collection. And I think as a private collection, somehow at some point, if this is well, you always say a hobby, but it's more like it's a big hobby. I wouldn't be surprised if many private collectors at some point talk about a private museum. Now that, for many reasons, the same ones I mentioned at the beginning, is a very limited option. Plus, I would imagine headaches, staff, security, very, very costly. Probably should have mentioned that at the beginning. So it's not, and my parents like to travel around the world. I don't live in Holland. And by the way, where are you going to build this museum? So for all sorts of reasons, the answer was always no. But digitally, we got to a point where we could recreate environments spectacularly, I should say. And so I had the idea of building a digital museum. And it was VR first, which was great. So people put on a headset and they come into this mega space, which is a fantastically designed museum by someone who used to work at a Dutch architect, used to work at Johan Liebeskind in New York. And we built that museum, and it is a fantastic project. And we've since been able to get that, I won't get into the tech, but to get that experience onto a website so that people with mobile phones and desktop and tablets can also see it.
Mm-hmm. And I think you've brought a few images from the museum itself for everyone to kind of imagine what it looks like if you haven't been on the website before.
So this is actually so when we launched the museum in 2017, we had this space, and there were 74 works of art in it. And it was created with the idea that you had infinite space, so you could open a new gallery and hang more paintings, because my parents still acquire works. And actually, we kind of liked the way it was set up. And the great thing about digital is it doesn't matter. It's not like if it hangs here, you can't hang it there. You can hang it in 1,000 places or 1,000,000 places at the same time. So we decided to build an exhibition space connected to the museum. And that's what you see here. I would invite everyone to look it up on the website and have a look at those spaces. So these are actually, since then, 24 new works that are in the collection as an exhibition. And this can also be, we have future plans to collaborate with other collections. And it's quite easy to create these exhibitions and to show them and to amplify them and to spread them digitally.
I'm excited for what's to come then.
We have to update it now because
because there's been a new purchase.
There's been some new purchases, yes.
Did your father take a lot of persuading with your idea, or was it a seamless process?
Well, we actually, I knew that, we've been doing lending to museums right from the start. So since 30 years we do that. We have a fairly extensive lending program, but it's limited because for many years we were hanging and had our paintings in the Maurits house, and they hung 5 or 6 paintings on their walls as a sort of reserve for their collection, but it's by definition limited. So I always knew that the way to spread the gospel, as it were, is to put it, or to use the internet. Now,
always knew.
Huh?
You always knew.
I always knew. Yeah. Having a son.
He did.
Anyway, the problem is that I have nothing to sell. Mm-hmm. In other words, his model is that you get clicks and then you sell something or a certain percentage. That's the model on the internet. Simply said, well, I don't have anything to sell. I have to try and convince people through the beauty of what the beauty of what we basically show is to become interested. So it's not an economic, it's not a financial model. Mm. So the question always was, well, so how do we go about this? And then Joel came up with this virtual reality museum, and I thought it was a great idea. So we had our first trial in Dubai, I think, in a hotel.
March 2017. 16.
16? Yeah. 17. Anyway, so, and I liked that whole concept, even though we were sort of stumbling over all sorts of electrical wires and everything.
Yeah, it was a bit clunky at the time.
It was a bit clunky. So, and then after making improvements, we opened that museum in 2017 in October in New York. Mm-hmm. And it was received very positively. I mean, there were articles in Bloomberg, there were articles in the New York Times, Financial Times in London. And so, yeah, it seemed like a good idea. So I had no hesitations. We like to think, even though I'm getting on, but I like to think modernly and use the possibilities that exist So I said, well, let's go for it. We were very early, and we were pre-COVID. Imagine, what could have happened if and all these museums had to close worldwide. They could have had a virtual reality gallery.
They still can.
And they still can. Yeah.
So we're all here at beautiful TEFAF, all enjoying exceptional pieces of art and art history in person. You've both touched on it a little bit, but from your perspective, how does the in-person viewing of artwork complement, or each other complement virtual reality? How do both experiences work together very well?
Well, it's basically, let's be clear about this. There's no, the virtual reality museum is an approximation. There is no substitute, thank you.
Sorry.
Substitute for looking at the real art. Even when you look at a picture of the internet, there's no substitute. You have to actually see the work of art in order to appreciate it, because it then becomes three-dimensional, whereas on a screen it's still two-dimensional. In the virtual reality museum, that's a little bit different because of the way this was photographed. It is somewhat three-dimensional, but it's still not the same as just seeing the real piece of art. So we always knew this, but it's a great idea that somebody in South America or in China or whatever, India, who wants to be interested in this case, Dutch art, which I think is one of the great schools of painting in the world, that person has in his living room, can go onto the internet and see great Dutch art. It's not the real thing, but it's a pretty good approximation. So that's... And what?
Well, and I completely agree. However,
thank you.
No, but I think because we spoke about this as well, and I think it's somewhere in your question, so I thought I'd.
Okay.
No, and I think that there is no going around digital anymore. I think it'd be a seriously missed opportunity not to use it, because the way I started really getting into our collection and really appreciating 17th century is by using technology. So I was day in, day out looking at photographs, big photographs of our collection. And if you look at an etching plate by Rembrandt, which is about as big as an iPhone, really, and you see what he created with some scratches in a piece of copper, composition, depth, light and dark, facial expressions, all with some lines in much like drawing, quite innovative, so you could print it and sell more, earn more money. If you look at these copper etch plates by themselves, and they're in front of glass, of course, so that's not the best experience. If you blow them up, we have a show now in Alkmaar, and there's a room dedicated to these 3 copper etch plates, and the walls are blown up images. And if you see what you discover once you blow it up, it's even more mind-boggling. So that I do think that it's a back and forth experience. It certainly complements it, and I think it enhances it. That was the but.
Thank you.
So, as the virtual museum director and a publisher of a magazine of the collection as well.
Yes.
There we go. You're very involved. I'm curious. Are you involved in the decision on new purchases? Do you consult Joël when you're choosing new artwork for your collection?
I consult with my granddaughter.
Oh, fantastic!
And she likes it. We may want to go ahead. But seriously, well, yes, we talk about it, but first of all, I talk to my wife because she is the one that has to give her intuitive, let's say, answer and her blessing as well. And it's quite interesting because she really, again, don't ask her for dates or anything, or even sometimes names, but she really knows how to look at paintings. Mm-hmm. And that's actually a very interesting experience. Mm-hmm. So with regard to Joel, he doesn't necessarily have to. I love the idea that he actually started buying books and started studying as well, because it's through knowledge that you gain and experience and talking to people about this stuff, that you actually understand better what Ilone and I are doing, and understand better where the collection is heading, and understand what great art is. Mm-hmm. Very important, yes.
And I do get questions about it. I never know if it's a test. It could be a painting he definitely does not want to buy, or they do not want to buy, and they might still ask me. It's happened. So, but I like it a lot. We're now here since yesterday morning. The three of us, we drove up here, and it's continuous. I went to Rome on Wednesday to see the Caravaggio exhibition, which I highly recommend. If you
better than Alkmaar,
of course not.
Oh.
No, but if we have about 15 or 18 Utrecht Caravagist paintings in our collection. So it's a very strong subsection of our collection, which I love. And but if you see where that comes from, basically the source, and it's very special that all these works in Rome are now together. You place that subsection of our collection in a very different perspective, and you start recognizing things, and you start seeing things. And then at the fair, you see a couple of paintings that are very nice from some of the great three Dutch Utrecht Caravagists. And then you talk about it with someone like our restorer, Martin Bijl, who gives you even more insight. And it's really a problem. And then we talk in the car about it, and undoubtedly we'll talk in the car back to Amsterdam about it. And then we'll have Zoom calls and talk almost on a daily basis about it. And not only about that, we talk about my kids sometimes, but it's very much a bonding experience as well.
Yes.
Yeah. That's actually important.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask.
Gives you the common. Bonding is actually a pretty good word. Mm-hmm. Brings you closer as a family. And that's also the idea of having this collection in the family. Because in, let's say, 100 years, when I won't be there, and my grandchildren won't know me, but if the collection is still around and is managed by the family, mm-hmm. It'll be a point of recognition, it'll be a point of identification. I think that's a wonderful idea.
Absolutely. It's always been important to you to share your collection with the public, mm-hmm. Giving it to many museums on loan, now showing it in the virtual museum. You mentioned before you have nothing to sell, but you certainly gifted the public with insight into your collection and education on your collection.
Yes.
What is it you would like the public to take from it?
I want you guys to come to see the collection. So I need to convince you through, let's say, talking to you, to come to the museum, over the threshold. And once you have you in the museum, I can show you what I mean. And that's an interesting process because I love doing these tours with my public, as it were, and talk about this stuff and talk about how Caravagism spread through Holland, through the Northern Caravagist School, and how it influenced Rembrandt, and not just Rembrandt, Frans Hals, Amsterdam, Delft, Leiden, etc., etc. And that is something that people need to learn, mm-hmm. because it's really great art. It's really special art. And, you know, this is the great time in Dutch history. We were a wealthy nation, and people, well, there was no photography, so people had paintings on their walls. They had sculpture, they had gold and silversmithing, you know, it all went to extremely high heights in terms of quality. Mm-hmm. And people should learn about these things. Mm-hmm. This is really our history. So yeah, I think it's important.
The virtual museum is part of that as well. Joel, you mentioned your intention of wanting to expand the physical museum experience, not replace it by the virtual museum. Do you see any potential or the same potential for any other spaces, such as an art fair and so on?
I do. I'm by no means think that every art fair should expand and have a digital tour. I mean, just in terms of logistics, that would never. I don't think that would work efficiently. But I do think that there are many opportunities to use digital to create a stronger community, have more touch points, have a digital place wherever anyone is from, a facilitating role for an art fair for the community and for the public and for the exhibitors to be able to reach out and to the existing community and grow it. So do I think that they should do the same thing that we did? No, probably not. But I wouldn't be surprised if there are many exhibitors who don't necessarily understand how to go about, just like in the museum world, how to go about digital. And I think there's an important role actually for TEFAF to step into, if I may.
Yes, last year there was a panel talk on how to attract young collectors and educate young collectors to appreciate art from all times of art history. I think you're contributing to that mission immensely with your museum loans, but also the virtual museum. In Fine Art Insurance, our intention is to work towards safeguarding art for future generations. And you're working toward the same mission in a very different but and unique and valuable way. So maybe my last question to you today is, how are you going to spend your time at TEFAF, and what does the fair mean to you?
Thank you. Finding the latest masterpiece, that's essentially the job I have here set for myself. And luckily that's still possible. And what has surprised me over the years is that we have been able to find masterpieces, not just by the great names, masterpieces even by lesser known masters who are darn good at what they, sometimes what they do. You know, sometimes they sort of are average, and then all of a sudden, boom, you see something, you say, wow, he was able to do that. And so, but it's not an easy way. It's not easy. It takes a lot of study. Buying Impressionism is far easier because it's colorful, it's easy, it's interesting, but it's 200 years later than Dutch art. And so in art, one thing follows the other. All the Impressionists, I might add, have actually studied Dutch art in the Louvre. They went to Zaandam to actually, paint. Monet went to Zaandam to paint in Zaandam, as an example. Other people went to Haarlem to see the great Halses. So that tells you something. These great masters that we so admire now, where did they get their ideas? Turner, we just bought a painting from a 17th century master that shows, I don't know, a sunrise or a sunset. And when I saw that painting, I thought, wow, that's like That's where Turner's got it from. I mean, that is 150 years before Turner, or 140 years before Turner. So it all sort of clicks together. And that's the beauty of art, to see that. It's not easy, but it's very worthwhile. And that's how we come to make decisions.
Thank you.
Well, that. So I find it. We don't live in the same country, so I find it very important and also interesting to have these conversations, meet new people, of course, see the older generation. Again, I've been coming here for a while as well, but also see the new generation and what they're up to and what they think about what we're trying to do, and what, maybe exchange ideas about what they're trying to do. And because I do think it's very important for many reasons that newer audience will be attracted in the coming years.
Absolutely,
so
yeah.
As experiential as it already is, with a beautiful entry, and there's a vibe at TEFAF. I think there's a lot more that I hope to see, and if I can maybe contribute there, then I would love to, because we live in an experiential world, and people need to be challenged, and sort of prodded away from their phones and experience things. And it's not only looking at art; it should be the whole package. So that's sort of what's going through my head for the next day and a half. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for all your insights, and it's been a delight for me to get to know you and to have this talk here today. You pulled up one image of the digitalization process. I don't know if you want to...
No, I was looking for the near the sunrise or sunset painting. I thought I had sent that also, but this is actually... in order to create a 3D sort of object out of, in essence, a painting is 3D because there's layers of paint on a piece of wood or on canvas. But in order to capture that, we did actually build our own sort of camera, which is a huge tripod with multiple cameras on there. And then what you start doing is just like the tiling system of Google Maps, you start taking thousands of pictures of a painting from all different angles, all different heights. And then now, not back then, but now my company merges these all together into a 3D model, so that when you have the headset on, you can actually go like that and see some difference in painting height. And so that's the type of detail we want to get to, because in real life that's probably what you can see as well. I would not recommend this to everyone. The last thing I'll say about this is that these are normal cameras. So if you take 80,000 pictures in 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks, the batteries don't like that. We were flashing a lot. And we had to actually buy a big old tub with industrial garbage bags and fill them up with ice so that the batteries would keep cool and we could continue shooting. So, but yeah, it's certainly an interesting process.
Well, George, I definitely think I understand better why you call your collection your life's work, not only because the collection is exceptional, but you've also built an exceptional bond with your family to collaborate on it.
That's the icing on the cake, very much. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Were there any questions or?
So we have 15 minutes for questions. We'll pass around the microphone. Please go ahead.
Thank you for this very nice family talk. About enhancing the digital, or if there's an added value, I think there is, and you can get closer to a painting, and you can see a painting, you can see it the way with your eyes. I mean, if you see what digital photography nowadays or filming can achieve, and you have to stop on the painting with your nose, and you even can see it. And nowadays, even with the Mona Lisa, you know how close can you get? And you always have the distance, and you have the glass, and you have the security between this. But if in your collection you don't have this glass in between, and you can, so it is really more an added value in a way than you think, and it gets an excess. It's not the aura. I think that's the one point where we don't have the real one, but you can. There's very much added value, I think.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
You can actually, when you see one of our paintings in the museum, you also cannot touch it. So I just want a disclaimer. But yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, a very simple one is we can show X-ray photography or infrared photography right there. We can have an audio tour whilst you're looking at the painting and guide you through the painting, as it were. And
show the back of the painting.
Yeah,
which for the old masters is sometimes not unimportant.
Yeah.
Or important. I
Yeah.
should say.
So very much agree that it complements, it enhances the experience if you do it well.
Thank you for your wonderful talk. I actually worked together with Joel's company, Moyosa, for our gallery, and it was a wonderful experience. So it's a great way to present art. I have a question for you. I know you're supposed to love all your children equally.
Oh.
Which
painting is your favorite in your Kremer collection?
Well, that's not the first time that question is asked. The problem is, it's really tough because you expect an answer, and it's, I understand the question, and the problem is that we have, and I can prove this to you if you would come to Alkmaar, and we would go through, which you're very welcome to do. My wife is going to do a tour on Wednesday in the Alkmaar Museum. But I'll be there as well because I'm her driver, so I might.
And here's a picture of her. We haven't.
Yep, that's right. That's the two of us. Yeah, that's before a painting, in front of a painting by Theodor Rombouts, which, by the way, is not in Alkmaar. But my point is, what we try to do when we collect is we buy what we love. And so it has to meet criteria. And the first one is we have to like it. It has to be attractive. And when you see thousands of paintings every year, you sort of get to know literally the picture. Secondly, there is the condition problem, which makes it sort of a little bit more difficult because after 400 years, many of these paintings may not be in optimal condition. Then the question is, how does it work in the oeuvre of that particular artist? So I can tell you that Jaap, the girl by Michael Sweerts, is the young maidservant. That is a painting that appeals to a lot of people. It appeals to Ilone, it appeals to me. It is a painting that I would find even sort of difficult to explain to you because it's such an unusual painting. But it appeals to a lot of people. You have a young girl, which she's pictured there. You have a young girl, which is not a normal subject, because she is a seamstress or a household girl, and so she could not afford this painting. This is an expensive painting because it's completely finished, and portraits in any case were expensive. So who was she? We have no idea. But she certainly didn't pay for this. So now the question becomes even bigger. And she doesn't even look at us. She's often compared to the girl with the pearl earring by Johannes Vermeer. Rightly so, they hung together in the Maurits house for 8 years. And they're totally different in terms of the way they sort of appeal to you. The Vermeer is in your face. It has blue, it has yellow, it has white, it has brownish, and she looks at you. So in terms of concept, a totally different painting. In terms of technical stuff, and our girl doesn't look at you, and she is dressed in conventional clothes, a working girl's clothes. But boy, is she simpatico, and she's just she's not looking at us, and she's not thinking of us. She's in her own world, so you can talk to her. And that fascinates me. It fascinates a lot of people. And so it's often been compared to the girl, Vermeer's girl, has even been compared to the Madonna, to
Mona Lisa. The Mona Lisa.
To the Mona Lisa. But and so she is sort of the carrier for the exhibition and for the collection. But then you have a wonderful early Rembrandt, you have a wonderful Gerrit van Honthorst's, very important for Dutch, for the spread of Caravagism in Holland, especially Honthorst. We have Kuip, and all these paintings have a story. So that's a long answer to, it's a long non-answer in a way to your question.
Good answer.
So there are many favorites in a way. I hope I'm...
It's an unfair question, but it's a great answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not easy.
Okay. As well, I would like to thank you for your wonderful talk and presentation of your gallery and your collecting habits. Also a question for you, Mr. Kremer Senior. Maybe a slightly private one, but I was wondering, because you said that your first acquisition was very impulsive, but all of the collectors, the passionate collectors, which I have met throughout life, they always realize that their collecting habits began at their early age. Maybe when they were still kids, like they had a habit to collect pebbles or cards or magazines. So I was wondering whether you managed to recognize those collecting habits already at early age and they just manifested through art when you grew and matured.
You're right. I actually collected knickers.
Marbles.
Marbles at a very young age.
So you also...
So in a way, it wasn't very serious, and I did that in competition with lots of kids of 8 or 10 or 9 years old. But I never had purchased serious art before I started this first painting. So it was a very impulsive way. I'm not sure where it came from. I was just mesmerized by the idea that this art is still available today. Not only that, you can actually learn, and people like to, share in this process. So there's a lot of knowledge around. You just have to ask, and I did a lot.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thanks. That was it. Was it? Anybody else?
No more questions? Well, thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your time at TEFAF. Thank you for taking the time out of your exciting time here. And thank you especially to the two of you.
Thank you, Francis. Appreciated it. Thank you for coming here.